here's a question that's divided racing fans for years: is who's faster? MotoGP bikes or Formula One cars? On paper, both are apex predators of speed, but if you throw them on the same circuit, who actually wins the lap time war? Now, before the comments section turns into a digital fistfight, now let's get one thing straight. Wait, both are insane feats of engineering. One balances on two wheels and human bravery. The other glues itself to the road like it's allergic to physics. But how they go fast, that's where things get fascinating. So let's set the stage. Picture the same track, let's say the Red Bull Ring in Austria. It's one of the few circuits both F1 and MG actually race on. Same corners, same straights, same elevation changes. The Formula One lap record, about 1 minute 3 seconds. MotoGP's best, around 1 minute 23 seconds, 20 seconds slower. Boom. End of debate, right? Not even close. Because that number doesn't tell the whole story. See, a MotoGP bike doesn't lose those 20 seconds because the rider forgot how to turn. It's because the two machines play by completely different rules of physics. An F1 car is basically a land-bound fighter jet. It creates speed by generating downforce. The faster it goes, the harder it's glued to the road. It can take corners like it's on rails because aerodynamic wings literally push it into the ground. A MotoGP bike, the complete opposite. Too much downforce, and the thing becomes impossible to lean. Riders want movement. They want the tires sliding, the chassis flexing, the rear wheels spinning, just enough to steer with the throttle. It's chaos, but controlled chaos. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where your jaw drops. A modern F1 car can corner at up to 5G. That means the driver's body feels 5 times heavier in a high-speed bend. MotoGP riders, around 1.6 to 1.8 gigabytes. Doesn't sound close, but remember, they're doing that while hanging off a 160 kilogram missile that's trying to buck them off at 340 kilometers per hour. F1 cars hit around 370 kilometers per hour on long straights. Shout out to Monza. MotoGP bikes can touch 362 kilometers per hour, which is absolutely nuts considering they're exposed to the wind like human flags. But the real decider isn't top speed, it's acceleration and braking. When an F1 car launches, it hits 100 kilometers per hour in 2.5 seconds. MotoGP bikes do it in about 2.6, so off the line, they're neck and neck. But watch what happens in braking zones. An F1 car stops from 300 kilometers per hour to 0 in less than 100 meters. A MotoGP bike needs almost double that, right? It's about 200 meters. Why? Tires and grip. An F1 car runs huge, slick tires wider than a human torso with insane surface area. Plus, the aerodynamics create so much downforce that at 200 kilometers per hour, it's pressing itself into the tarmac with roughly 2,000 kilograms of force. The brakes aren't even fighting gravity, they're using it. A MotoGP bike has to balance traction between two tiny patches of rubber, each about the size of a credit card. Too much brake and the front folds, too little and the rider overshoots the corner. It's a ballet, not a brawl. But here's the twist. What MotoGP lacks in raw cornering grip, it makes up for in agility. F1, drivers turn a steering wheel. MotoGP riders become the steering system. They shift their entire body weight, flicking 160 kilograms from one side to another at 200 kilometers per hour, scraping knees, elbows, and sometimes shoulders. Every lap is part science, part body language, part prayer. And that brings us to the first major difference in lap time philosophy. Formula One cars dominate the corners with physics. MotoGP riders dominate them with bravery. Now let's talk corners themselves. The battleground of milliseconds. In F1, the key is apex perfection. You miss it by an inch and your whole lap's ruined. In MotoGP, there's no fixed apex. The bike moves, flexes, slides. A perfect corner is one that feels right, not looks right. If you overlay their telemetry, F1 cars blast through corners at speeds that make your brain hurt. Take Silverstone's Copse Corner. An F1 car can do it at around 290 kilometers per hour. A MotoGP bike, barely 170. That's a 120 kilometers per hour gap through the same piece of tarmac. But in tight hairpins, the story flips a little. The F1 car still wins on paper, but it can't turn instantly because of its long wheelbase and massive width. the MotoGP bike flicks through like a feather. On technical circuits like Sachsenring, that agility lets them claw back chunks of time, but never quite enough to catch a car. Let's look at pure lap comparison for a second. At Circuit of the Americas, a track both series race on, F1's pole time was 1 minute 35 seconds. MotoGP's 2:02, that's a 27-second gap. And that's despite MotoGP bikes reaching similar top speeds on the back straight. So where's all that time lost? Corners and braking. Always corners and braking. Because an F1 car doesn't slow down the same way, it dives. It decelerates so violently that the driver's helmet can slam forward with over 100 kilograms of force. Riders can't match that because if they did, they'd simply fly off the bike. Literally. Yet despite all that, there's one area where MotoGP absolutely humiliates F1. Acceleration feel. F1 launches are explosive, yes. But when a MotoGP rider cracks open the throttle out of a slow corner, the power-to-weight ratio is so aggressive that the bike tries to lift the front wheel in every gear. They're taming a wild animal with throttle, traction control, and sheer guts. F1 drivers trust grip. MotoGP riders trust instinct. All right, so the F1 car clearly owns the stopwatch, but raw lap time isn't everything. Because when you look at what's happening inside those seconds, MotoGP might actually be more extreme. And let's talk about risk. When an F1 driver makes a mistake, worst case, they slide off, hit gravel, and maybe kiss a barrier. The car's carbon tub protects them like a cocoon. When a MotoGP rider messes up, the only thing between them and 200 kilometers per hour asphalt is a leather suit and good luck. Every lap is one mistake away from disaster, and yet they push harder, corner after corner. That's why when you watch onboard footage, F1 looks surgical, while MGPP looks emotional. It's pure fight-or-flight energy. Now, aerodynamics. F1 lives and dies by it. Wings, floors, diffusers, everything is about air control. Without downforce, an F1 car would be a fast go-kart. With it, it's a land rocket that can theoretically drive upside down. MotoGP only recently started dabbling in aero. Those little fins you see on modern bikes, they add downforce under acceleration, keeping the front wheel planted, but too much of it makes the bike hard to turn, so engineers are constantly juggling that balance. It's like trying to design a bird that wants to fly but also corner like a snake. And yet, the way riders use their bodies creates their own kind of downforce. When they hang off the bike, they shift the center of gravity, reduce lean angle, and change the tire contact patch, all to squeeze extra speed from physics itself. It's part science, part art, and part sheer madness. Let's throw another stat that blows people's minds. In a full F1 lap, about 70% of the time is spent flat out on throttle. In MotoGP, it's closer to 40%. That's how different their handling dynamics are. F1 cars live in grip. MotoGP bikes dance on the edge of losing it. Now let's settle this once and for all with some head-to-head fantasy scenarios. Scenario 1, drag race. From 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, both are basically even. But by 200 kilometers per hour, the car's aero grip kicks in and it starts pulling away. By 300, the F1 car is gone. But if the race were a wheelie contest, yeah, MotoGP wins that one with style points. Scenario 2, tight track. Something like Monaco or a small kart circuit, the F1 car's downforce becomes useless at low speeds. It can't stretch its wings. The MotoGP bike could actually stay competitive there because its agility and narrowness let it flick faster between corners. It wouldn't win, but it'd be closer. Scenario 3, long track with sweeping corners. This is where the F1 car just says, good night. Places like Spa or Silverstone are tailor-made for cars that can stick at 5G. Bikes simply can't carry that speed without turning into human frisbees. So, yes, on any proper racetrack, the Formula One car wins the lap time war. No contest, but if you define win by which is more insane to ride or drive, MotoGP takes the crown. Because here's the thing, F1 is about precision engineering. MotoGP is about human instinct. In F1, you control the car. In MotoGP, you survive the bike. Ask any rider and they'll tell you, every lap is like dancing with gravity and hoping it doesn't step on your toes. Riders don't just manage tires and fuel, they manage fear. And that's what makes comparing them so fascinating. Formula One. Drivers sit in million-dollar spaceships designed to cheat physics. MotoGP riders strap themselves to rockets and negotiate with it. Let's also talk about how both series evolve differently. F1's entire DNA is built on technology. Every few years, they reinvent what fast even means: hybrid engines, ground effects, DRS wings, you name it. MotoGP's heart, though, is still the rider. The bikes evolve, sure, but the biggest variable has always been the human being on top of it. You can't code bravery. That's why people connect emotionally with MotoGP differently. You can see the human struggle, the body movement, the sweat, the risk. Every save and every crash looks raw. In F1, the drama's behind a wall of carbon fiber and radio chatter. But don't get it twisted. Both are brutal. Both push the limits of what the human body and brain can handle. The drivers in F1 endure 5G turns for 2 hours straight. Riders in MotoGP ride with heart rates of 180 for 40 minutes, constantly shifting, braking, and wrestling a bike that wants to murder them. If you put it in simple terms, F1 is a chess match played at 300 kilometers per hour. MotoGP is a bar fight at 300 kilometers per hour. Different energy, same addiction. Now, when people argue about who's better, they're missing the point. It's not about who wins, it's about how they win. A Formula One driver wins by mastering control, trusting the math, the machine, the margin. A MotoGP rider wins by surrendering control, trusting the feel, the chaos, the heartbeat. The stopwatch only tells part of the story. Lap times measure efficiency, but passion, fear, bravery, that can't be timed. So yeah, F1, cars crush MGP bikes in lap time, but if you measured racing by pure courage, the bikers might have already lapped them, and maybe that's why fans love this debate, because it's not really about speed, it's about philosophy. Do you worship grip or guts? Do you trust technology or talent? In a world obsessed with who's fastest, in-game style twist here, maybe the real answer is they both win, just in completely different universes. Formula One shows what happens when humans engineer perfection. MotoGP shows what happens when humans become the machine. And in the end, whether it's 4 wheels or 2, downforce or wheel spin, every racer on those grids is chasing the same thing: the perfect lap that lives somewhere between fear and freedom. So, who really wins the lap time war? The stopwatch says Formula One, but the soul of racing? That one belongs to MG. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't just scroll past. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments which side you're on, MotoGP or Formula One, because we've only just scratched the surface of what happens when man, machine, and madness meet on the same track.